Which history echo Bashman? As was clear from my little introduction, this video is about which, history, echo, bash, man, and a few other commands that are available in the Linux system. This video is going to be about some useful commands to know. I'm actually going to be doing 2 or 3 of these videos because to do it all in one would take quite a while, so I figured I'd split it out and try and keep that video time below half an hour, which all of my videos seems to be creeping into at the moment, so we'll see how we go. So yeah, we're going to get cracking on some useful commands. I might find that there's some I'll do in the next video or the video afterwards that could have been better off in this one, but hey, let's just go with the flow. So here we are back in our favourite VM, the same one we've been using through the entire series, and let's just get into it. So first things first, we're actually using the bash shell here, the born again shell. If I just run ps3 here, we can see I've got my SSH connection and we're running bash, and then ps3 has been run on top of that. Now this is parent and child relationships. If I go ahead and now run bash, and you can see now I can run ps3 again. Let's just get rid of that sudo. We now have sshd bash bash ps3. If I do bash once more and bash again, you can sudo bash 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 ps3. So you might be wondering what the point of that is. It basically allows us to open a new shell within a shell. So you can see I can just exit out of all them until eventually I exit the SSH connection. So that's what bash is. It's just the shell we use. There is also shell, which we can shell into, and again, ps3. And we can see that we logged in via SSH into a bash shell and then ran sh, then eventually ps3. And it's just a way of running shells as you need to. So yeah, I'm just going to exit out of all them and just wanted to quickly cover that so you know what a bash shell is. It's basically the console we are using right now and typing into. Next, I want to go through the environment variables and how they work. So if we write env into the terminal and press enter, you can see all these environment variables that are configured. So we have the shell here that we just talked about, which is bin bash. We have the current working directory, or print working directory, which we'll cover in just a moment, which is the directory I'm in right now. We then have a few other variables all relating to the shell we're in and the session that we have open. We have our username in there and a few other bits. So if I want to print out one of those variables, I would just do echo $, and then the name of the variable. In that case, put in user gives me true. If I wanted to set my own variable, I'd just do my variable. That variable name can be whatever you want it to be. It can be hello, I am a variable, and we set that equal to something, and I have content. Now, if you want spaces in your variable content, then you have to put quotes around it. If you don't want spaces in your variable content, then you don't have to put quotes around it. Now, let me just run that and I'll show you. See, straight away it has errors. It errors out, I should say. So if I actually echo, I'm not going to actually type that out again, I'm just going to copy and paste that. You can see that's got nothing in it because an error occurred. So if I put quotes around it, we can now echo that out, and I have content is printed to the screen. So that's how we can set a variable. And the thing is with that, if I then run that bash command again and try and print that out, you can see my history has changed now. So I would have to print that out. You can see it's not there anymore. So env, there is no variable there known by that. You can actually make it available to sub terminals though, as it were. So if I take a look at that again, I can actually go up and put the word export in front of this. So before I do that, I just want to show you the env. You'll see here that there is no environment variable with that name. So if we want one with that name to be available elsewhere, we can export the variable. And to do that, we just put export in front of it. Now if I run env, we can see if I scroll up, I have a variable and I have content. Now if I run bash and run env again, we can see that's available in subshells, and that is as many subshells as we want. So if I just run env again, scroll up, it's always going to be there. If, however, I open a new SSH session, which I will quickly do, you'll see that it's not available. It's gone. To make it available in here, I would have to add it somewhere within the system that can read on logging in. So I'll just log out of that real quickly. I'll go into etc environment, and in here I'll add I can change and read any file there. Let's just put sudo in front of that. And what we'll do is add a var equals something. And I'll write that out. Then I will log in over here. And if I do env, we can see that a var is now available. And that will be available to any user. If I want to make a variable available to just my user, then I can do that in .bash rc. And I can put something in here. Drew's var equals secret. So now, if I go ahead and log out again, and then log in, I'll see that global variable available here. I will also see mine. Sorry, my apologies. You have to put export in front of that too. It won't just work like that. In your bash rc, you have to put export in front of it because it's essentially running those commands that are within there. So now if I do that, we'll see up here, Drew's var secrets, as well as having that global one. So that's how we manage variables. If I want to unset those variables, the ones that I've set on the session itself, I can just simply grab the name and put unset the name of the variable. And that will now have removed that particular variable. So if I scroll up here, we'll see it's now gone. So that's how we can set variables. I'm just going to go ahead and remove all of those ones I've just set. And of course, I didn't sudo it. So we'll delete that. And we'll delete the one in bash rc. And if you actually have a quick look through bash rc, I'm just going to quickly touch on this. So I just undo that change I've just made. Then you'll see a few aliases that have been set up. For example, some people will run this command fairly often. So Ubuntu have provided a shortcut. So instead of having to run ls-alf, we can just run ll. And it will do the same command because that's just an alias. And you can add your own aliases there as you want. So that's a little bit about the bash rc environments and a little bit about echo as well, because echo just prints out whatever you give it essentially. So yeah, there you go. Next, we'll take a look at the pwd command, which is print working directory. So that just shows you the directory you're currently in. So if I cd over to var log, for example, and then run pwd, we can see pwd is now equal to that. And just a quick note, if I type env again, we'll see it's also changed just here. So that's the print working directory command. And if you ever want more information on a command, you can use the man command. So you can do man. So that will be the manual for manual. And that will tell you how you can use man in a more advanced way. You can also do man things like pwd, which will give you the manual for print working directory. And you can see here, you can provide a few flags to it. And you can pretty much use man for anything. I'm not going to say everything because there is some things that don't come with a manual. For example, if I do man, just picking something, as you do the word set, you'll see there's no manual entry for set, but set is a command that is related to environment variables. So you will actually see any environment variables you set in here. This gets updated. So just as a quick point of that, I'm going to quickly show you something. So we'll do that exporting again. We'll do set, and then we'll grep. We'll learn about grep in a previous video. It's just a pattern matcher. And then we'll grep for that variable. And we can see that's now in that output. Now if I unset that one, and then do the set command again, it's now got nothing there. So it's still got the reference to it, but there's nothing in the variable itself. Unset being another command that's available. That's how we unset a variable. There's also another command we can look at called which, and which will give you the location of the command that you're running, the location of the binary that relates to the command you're running. So when you type a command, you're actually just running a binary on Linux itself. So it's just a file essentially that has been packaged together and can now be used to run things, let's say, for want of a better wording of that, on your system. So for example, when I run ls, that does stuff, let's say, in the background. I won't get into what's going on the kernel level right now, but essentially it lists the contents of a directory. If you want to know where the ls command lives on your system, you can just type which ls and that will show you where it is. Now, when you type ls, this is actually what's being run. So if I now run that, I get the same result. You can do which to find out where which lives. Pretty much everything will be in user bin by default. However, there is a location called USR, I should say, local bin, and that is used by most people for anything they install. So if you want to download something like, in the world of Kubernetes, you download kubectl so you can interact with Kubernetes. That usually gets dumped in user local bin. So you will find that stuff in there. How does the system know that that's where that stuff is, essentially? Well, there's an environment variable called path, which you may have noticed in the environment folder. And this is it. And what this says is these locations should be essentially readable off the bat. So anything that's in any of these locations should be run without having to give the full path. And what I mean by that is I can just run ls because it's in this location. And because it's in there, if I actually list the contents of that, everything that you see here is runnable without having to put user bin in front of it. And that's all the path does. So another one we could take a look at real quick is Uname. And Uname gives us the name of the system we're using, which is Linux. If we put -a on the end, we get all of the information. So we've got Linux, we have the host name, the Linux kernel, the operating system, and some information about the build time. And when I say build time, I mean the kernel build time. That's a little bit of useful information that you can get relating to the kernel that you're using. If you want to know about the operating system you're using, you can take a look at OS info that sits in etc. So we have a look at etc, OS release, sorry, not info. We can see here the version of Ubuntu that I'm using, which will be updated in a future video, and a few other bits of information such as the URL for the operating system itself and the code names. So yeah, there's a little bit of information on the operating system that we're using. The last command I'm going to quickly go through is history. So history gives us the history of commands that have been run, and you can see everything that I've just run there. And this is useful because it goes all the way back to when I first started this VM tutorial series, really. So if I scroll to the start, you can see the original video I did with the SSH config and a few other bits about the MDADM when we started doing some bits on RAID. And yeah, there's plenty of stuff in here. There's quite a lot. There's also stuff in there that you won't have seen in videos because I've played around in this VM just to prep myself for some of these videos too. I will just quickly show you where history gets its history from. So all of the history that you see there is actually stored in .bash_history. So this is your local history on your session for your user. So if you cut that out, then you can see all those commands there. Now, these are used for seeing what people have run in the background, for seeing what people have run on the machine. Should something have gone wrong, we can check the history to see what's happened. Now, if I type history and you had a user on here and they typed history, well, you typed history if you had a user on the system, then we would both have a different history. But we could use that to troubleshoot maybe a problem that's happened. We could see if you made a problem or I made a problem occur, and yeah, that's how it can be used. What we'll do is we'll quickly look at the touch command, and to do that, I just write touch test. And doing that, there is nothing in there, and we can now open that file up and make some changes to it. Now, if I hadn't have done touch first, let me just remove that file, then when I open it, we would see new file down here. But because I did touch first, now when I open it, it's not a new file. This is useful for automation in things like creating a log file ready for a service to use, should it need to. There's plenty of other reasons you'd use touch, but that's just one of the examples. The thing with this is, yeah, a single file name is absolutely fine, but what if I wanted to do test file name here? And this is what I wanted my file to be called. Then if I do this, what's actually going to happen is it's going to create 3 files called test, file, and name. And you can see these ones here with quotes. So I'm going to remove all of those files now and show you how we would do this, essentially. So let me just remove all of them. If I wanted to create a file with test file name, I could escape it this way, and that would create a file of that single name. I could also remove that file. I could also create it using quotes around it instead and get rid of those backslashes. So those backslashes, they just create a escape. So you can escape new lines, you can escape tabs, you can escape spaces, and plenty of other. So there's special characters essentially that are allowed that you are allowed to escape. And as a result, those backslashes are needed to denote that escaping. That's what it is called. Basically what's happening is if I do touch 1, 2, 3, 4, then the way Linux sees that is it says, oh, you want to create 4 files, one with the name of 1, one with the name of 2, one with the name of 3, one with the name of 4. But if you didn't want that, then you could say, okay, ignore those spaces essentially, put them as part of the file name, and it will go, okay, cool. So that's a singular file name. And to modify that, if I put O for 1 and then press tab, it will fill it in for me. And that is a file called 1234. Instead of 4 files, one with the name of 1, one with the name of 2, one with the name of 3, and one with the name of 4. So there's a little bit about quoting history, uname, man, which, what else did we cover? PWD, export, environment, and a couple of other things I actually can't remember. We've done quite a bit there. The other thing you've seen me using there is cat. Cat is for concatenation. So just to give you an idea of how that works real quick, I'm just going to open up that test file name and we'll do hello in there. I will then open up 1, 2, 3, 4 and do world in there. And then what I'm going to do is cat out test file name and 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can see hello world. Now, how that's useful is I can redirect that output, that's what that chevron is, into a new file called hello world. If I do that, I'll now see in there have both of those files turned into one. And now I can modify that. That's what concatenation does. You'll see cat used just to read files a lot of the time. Technically, that's not what it's for. It is used for concatenating files together. And I think the last thing that I probably used here that wasn't explained was the rm command. Rm just removes things, that's all. So I can remove the files that I've just created using that command. And that's pretty much all I'm going to cover for this video. So that's everything for now. In the next video, I'm going to be covering a few other commands. I'll teach you a little bit more about moving files around, copying them, removing them, just doing a few things with files and directories themselves. I'll then take a look at things like head and less and zipping files up or tar.gz and things like that. We'll cover a few different things. I'm going to try and give you as many useful commands as possible so that you can be pretty well equipped to work with Linux itself and things within Linux. So I'll see you in the next one.